Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special episode of GW4W's Heart to Heart series. With everything going on in the world, we thought it was really important to have a very focused conversation today. I think for any of you that know us, since the beginning, we have worked very hard to include leadership and voices from diverse backgrounds so that we can learn from each other and understand how we can move forward together. And we are very clear that there is a direct connection between gender bias, racism, and health. And that all women are impacted by gender bias. We are also very clear that barriers are higher and harder to overcome for women from diversity backgrounds. And that's why we thought this was so important to have this conversation. Today, we will specifically focus on racism and the Black experience in America. This session, I am very pleased to say, is being led by our board member, Jennifer Ingram, who is the founder and CEO of Calibrated Lenses. Jen has worked in diversity and inclusion leadership, both at the Mayo Clinic and most recently for the United Way in the greater Cincinnati area. She's been involved in D&I research and is a regular speaker at conferences on this topic. So she is truly an expert, both from a research perspective and from somebody that has made positive change in organizations. She's joined today by our GW4W board member, Shaillee Chopra, the co-facilitator today. And Shaillee is also the board president for International School of Story, one of our sister organizations, and a principal at Lumina Health Partners. Thank you, both of you, for your leadership. And Jen, I'm going to turn the conversation over to you now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, ma'am. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to have this global platform to engage in this important discussion. I think that so often we end up in situations where we set out to have conversations and to address the tough topics. And sometimes the elephant doesn't quite make it into the room, and sometimes it doesn't quite make it onto the table. And so with that, I have prepared some remarks. Lynn, I too am a writer. And so I prepared something called Safe Spaces and False Security that I will use to open our event today. In 2020, myself and many others have unexpectedly embraced that outside isn't really safe. First, due to COVID-19 and the increased risk of death, but most recently, because of the same reasons that my ancestors feared, instances of overt and explicit racism. The other degree of safety that we're grappling with is that inside many spaces aren't safe either. We've always known that our workplaces were places of conditional safety, and our survival relied upon believability that our performance, just safe enough to earn our wages, just safe enough to be able to provide for our families, just safe enough to believe that we could reach greater heights if we went along to get along, if we didn't challenge the way that things have always been done, if we didn't outshine our superiors, if we made those above us look good without shining too brightly. We knew that if we wanted to be the exception and not the rule, we'd have to masterfully play each instrument perfectly, without daring to crescendo or innovate outside of the stanzas that were given. The illusion of inclusion was presented as a means of painting inside of the lines, but what you will find is that if you dare to believe, to dream, to strive, to achieve, and your colors extend beyond the lines, that you will be silently and subtly ushered back to where you belong, falling from grace and excluded from the race. The race for excellence is one that is long. The finish line is on the field. And it's not the same as the goalpost we used when conditioning in the gym. The line in the gym was upheld by the love and protection of survival strategies that were passed down. Strategies to navigate to avoid getting caught became survival tactics to avoid getting lynched, became survival tactics to avoid being considered the stereotype and bobbing and weaving to bypass mass incarceration. The practice in the gym became the survival tactics we now employ to climb a corporate ladder. The finish line on the field is one that is unspoken, unwritten politics that vary from the company handbook, but the chokehold of the trap is once you've crossed the line is always the same. The fall from grace is one that impedes career progress. The bright futures and star of the month eclipse into a black ball. navigating the similar halls of oblique emotions and mere reflections of power plays leveraged on plantations to uphold segregation and toxic work cultures is terrifying. The fragile realities of making it suddenly crumble around us. The extinguished belief in progress is suffocating all of us, even those who thought we were okay, not great, not quite equal, but okay. The emancipation, making it a double consciousness. One hand feels like eagles, suspended in the air, gliding across a sky of success and opportunity. No safety net there for the ones that achieve. Just clouds of fear that as you fly higher, vulnerability intensifies. Gravitational forces of those still behind. You can't go back because those that you lifted as you climb will lose faith that one day they can really be whatever they want to be. The glorious dream that future generations can abandon responsibility and respectability politics and truly be seen. Brilliant, unexplained, radiant light shining unconstrained. The path and thin line between us and them is translucent. The chokehold of poverty is never too far away. Now, I'm a business owner, past organizational executive. I'm a fourth generation descendant of refugees that settled north after fleeing a Jim Crow South oppression. But the connection to poverty is still proximate. I am no better than, no smarter than, no more skilled than those that missed one step in a dance. Those that have been unable to reclaim a place in the shining grace of this American stage. For me and many others, our stories are the same. Code switching and double dutching is the only way to remain in the game. We live on a short leash of superficial attainment. We are afraid. We are scared. We are vulnerable, fearful of being the one that set us all back. We live in a world where excellence realized could be paralyzing, proverbial neck to the knee for 8 minutes and 46 seconds of our dreams, our hopes, our ambitions for future generations, not just ourselves. Excellence on the path of prosperity for Blacks is not inherited. Excellence is evolutionary. It is acquired incrementally, and it can be passed down generationally. Black excellence is our currency, equivalent to generational wealth, the richness of experiences and depth of knowledge committed to community, uncanny unity, and depiction of fortitude is what makes us wealthy. Deprived of surplus advantages and compounded interest of being born white. I cash in my chips by continuing to climb from the shoulders of giants that came before me in hopes of removing barriers for those that I am lifting, and still I rise. I continue to climb over everything that impedes my path. I didn't wake up in this space. It has been the constant commitment of uncovering the seeds of hopes and dreams that were directly and indirectly planted within me by my mother and those that came before me. I do this work in pursuit of actualizing Martin's dream and becoming the greatest version of my ancestors' wildest dreams. Daily, I hold up mirrors, inspiring others to embrace the rejection of false narratives that are ascribed. Our people can only take us but so far. There was hope at the Mason-Dixon line. There was optimism in Tulsa. There was faith in Greenwood. And today, we are resilient figureheads of first that know how to dance.
Wow. So powerful. So beautiful. Wow. Said. Thank you so much, Jen. And now I'm going to turn the conversation over to Shaillee. I'm emotional. To Shaillee Chopra, so that we can expand on the conversation. Thank you for framing this so beautifully. Shaillee?
Jennifer, I'm at loss of words because everything you said poured into me, seeped into me. I'm having goosebumps right now. So thank you for those truly soulful, heartful expressions. I only want to add my two pieces. My piece of the story is as an Asian, as a woman of color, as an immigrant in this country. I grew up in India, and I come from a smaller minority community called the Sikhs. We're part of North Indian community. You might see the gentlemen, they have beards and we wear turbans. and the women. And so I grew up in a community. My first exposure to racism was in 1984. We used to travel nationally and internationally because my dad was part of Navy. So I was kind of in a bubble, secluded. Our main identity was we were armed forces. We were the front end. It didn't matter. We were Sikhs, we were brown, we were little white, we were rich, we were poor, we were armed forces. And in 1984, I moved back to Delhi with my family. And that was the year there were communal riots against the Sikhs. And my first exposure to why, because we look different, we choose to have faith that's different. It's our appearance of wearing of the turban, choosing our faith, wearing the memorabilia could make us a target. And I remember at the age of 7, I first saw in the riots a man being held by a mob and burned alive. And that was my first exposure to communal riots based on race, based on identity. And that set the tone for this question in my mind: why is looking different, being different, bad? Who set these criteria? What skin color, what faith gets to be higher in the hierarchy than the other one? Why do we as minorities work twice as harder to fit in, to excel, but always tiptoeing around the boundaries? We can shine, but we cannot outshine. We can have a voice, but we cannot be too loud. And then mix on there with the racism, being a gender, being a woman on top of it. You could be a woman of color, you could be a woman of faith, you can shine, but you dare not outshine. You dare not outshine the box of your gender-based community, of your race-based community. I moved to US about 25, 26 years ago. You know, back in those days when I moved here, I was like, this is a land of free and this is a land of equal, and there shall be no discrimination based on identity. And I learned it just had its own flavor to it. And it just had its own complexities to it. And here yet I had a box and I had a label. And guess what? I see all these other little communities that have the label, that have their boxes, but yet we all have one thing in common. We are trying to own our voices. We are trying to own our voices no matter how loud they are, what they say. So all I want to say is these current times, they're not new. This is probably bubbling up of generations and generations of systematic suppression that we need to handle. Why? Because we cannot close our eyes to it anymore, and we owe it to our next generation. I owe it to my boys who are growing up here, who when incident with George Floyd happened and the protests happened, came up to me and said, but Mom, why? My God, it could have been me. I'm a man of color and I am gay, and right there, I could be the target. So I stand by this movement, deeply entrenched in it, because it is not because I'm an Asian, I'm a Black, or I'm a white, I'm a human. And this is a human rights issue, and we must all stand by it. And it starts by talking about it. Even if the conversation is uncomfortable, we all have to teach ourselves to have those conversations and create spaces for it. So thank you to each one of you for agreeing to lend your voice, to lend your passion and lend your insights to this discussion. We're deeply honored to have you guys here, and I look forward to more of your insights. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to invite each one of you to take just a few minutes to perhaps share your personal stories. And I'll start with Jennifer, you and your lovely mom, Kim. Thank you so much.
Thank
so
you.
Wonderful to have you both. And I'd like to start with maybe if you both want to share your story.
Absolutely. I think I'll provide a little bit of framing. It's not what you do, but why you do it. I do this work not because I thought that I would take this path. I do this work because it is my life's calling. And what that means to me is, having had all of these varied experiences growing up, deep down, I always knew that I wanted to be someone that fought for those that didn't have a voice and didn't work to replace their voice, but to create platforms and spaces for their voices and their experiences to be amplified. I watched my mom navigate corporate America as a Black woman for most of my life. She was a single mom that raised me, that fought so hard, and I didn't always understand all of the decisions that she made. And for many years, I was even a little upset about some things, but you give grace as you know more, you do more, you have a greater platform and ability to understand things. But I also think that it's so critically important as I witness her life, then growing up and doing this work. I do this work for folks that were like my mom, within organizations that couldn't shine too brightly. With the hope of me walking in my truth and being able to be authentic, I should be and am the pillar of what this is and leading this work within an organization. And if I can't be authentic and fully myself, then what is the true investment of inclusion within organizations? And so I've had the great pleasure, as Mim mentioned, to do this work with many global and nationally known brands and organizations. But what I will say is that it's an evolution and a shift occurring in this work, from a programmatic approach at having awareness building activity to needing to dig in a little bit deeper, because people are still not having an inclusive experience. And so with that, I'll turn it over to my mom.
Thank you so much for the platform. So many things that have been stated already rang true.
You need to speak a little louder.
Here, let's move. Is this better? Is that better?
Oh, much better.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
And there have been so many experiences, I can probably take another 2 hours just to touch on bullet points of experiences that I've had over the years. But some of the highlights and some of the big ones happened early in my career. I probably didn't even realize they were happening. I've been in this field since I was about 22, 23 years old. And I think it really sank in that there was a difference as a pioneer. Oftentimes I was the only project manager or the only Black program manager amongst many. And so it was an opportunity to kind of pioneer that space. But in doing that, you know, I had several experiences, eye-opening experiences along the way. You know, I've actually been told that, you know, Kim, that's a great strategy and a great initiative, and it would probably bring in an extra $2-3 million to the business, but we need to sell it, and we've got to get about $20 million to get this sold, so it's probably not best if you do that. I want you to go meet with John, and let's let John sell it. So I write the PowerPoint, John delivers the PowerPoint verbatim, and we get the money. John leaves and we have to execute. And I think I'm done in that work. And then John comes to me and says, okay, Kim, I have no idea how to do this. So now I'm actually doing this and I'm silent in doing this. Something that Jennifer said earlier is about missing one step in the dance, right? So John was in a very good spot. I could not afford to miss one step in that dance, because it was John's face associated with that dance. We're not afforded as women, as Black women, as women in leadership, to make some of the mistakes that white males are allowed to make and get away with. I've actually sat and been called into meetings to clean up situations. I've consulted for many, many, many years. And in consulting, you know, it's the client relationship. It's all about the relationship. So you have these clients, and I've had situations where there was just a lack of confidence, but it was the boss's next door neighbor's son who needed a job. I've had situations where, you know, this white male came in every day drunk. And I get called in and say, Kim, you know, here's the situation. We can't lose this $10 million client. We know you can fix it. So not only is the pressure on to fix the problem, but then I'm called into a separate meeting saying, well, you know, John's got a family yeah, he was drinking on the job, but we don't want him to lose his job because we want him to be able to support his family. So we're going to give him another chance. Kim, how can we do this so that, you know, John comes out of this clean? And I'm asked to position these things so that these stories are lightened. At the same time, you encounter something far less significant from a minority, a woman, a Black, an Asian in the same space, and it's, oh my gosh, they went into the client site and his shirt was wrinkled. We've got to get rid of him. This is the same client that we made circumstances for to gently remove the other person, but in this situation, far less significant. He hasn't stolen anything. He's not drinking on the job. He hasn't cussed out the client's vice president. His shirt was wrinkled. And he is now unemployed with a family, a wife and children. So these experiences go on and on and on. The microaggressions that have come about many times between racism now, the systemic racism that we're experiencing now, and the racism of the past. You know, you have these situations that make you stop dead in your tracks. You kind of turn your head to the side, you look in the room, nobody else has caught this, and you're going, did that just mean what I think it meant? And you very delicately have to step to figure out, do I let this one ride? Do I go home and have a glass of wine to recoup over this? Mm-hmm. Or is this one that I have to gently figure out how to say, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't really understand what you meant by that. Can you clarify that for me? And by that time, the spin is so different, right? These are the things that we can't go to HR about. They're subtle, they're minute. Oh, you're so articulate. Oh, you don't sound Black. I didn't know what you were talking to you on the phone. I'm shocked when I met you face to face. You know, I like you. You're different. And these are the things that over years build up. So to do these stressful, high-powered leadership jobs that we do, we have to do them, but we also have to do them balancing the fact that we can't be our own authentic self. We can't respond. We can't even professionally respond a lot of times because even the tone that we take and how we say something, we have to be very cautious so that we're not labeled as the angry Black woman. And all we're trying to do is set a tone so people understand and take us seriously. But it's so easy to pick up some of the stereotypes and the negativity, and there's really no outlet for us to go to. So I'm hoping with some of these systemic racism things that are at the forefront, the understanding of the position that we've had for so many years that's created a level of stress, just trying to do your job day in and day out. Your workloads are bigger. You know, I've consulted for many, many years as a program director, a portfolio director, I've been a director, a CIO, executive director. And in those spaces as program director and portfolio directors, I may have had a $500 million portfolio where my counterparts had $200 million or $10 million portfolio. And I'm going, hey, wait a minute, why is this the case? And I'm told, you can handle it, Kim. They can't. Those are just some of the short stories, and I will stop there and give others an opportunity.
Thank you. And so relatable, Kim. You know, I think all of us, I saw all of us kind of nodding our heads because in your stories, we saw ourselves. We saw people we knew. So to your point, it's systemic, it's not of today. And we need to not only talk about it, we need to talk about it, give it voice, but we also need to talk about what would we do eventually to change it, because that's where it matters. I'm going to move on to maybe Lynette. Lynn, would you like to share your stories?
Sure. I mean, I feel like Kim really covered all of the bases. Here's the thing, and it's so funny because the other day, another colleague of mine had a chat about what some of those microaggressions that have happened in our professional settings. And a lot of what was shared by a whole group of very professional women. And the one who shared it was an engineer herself. working in DC. So I was like, oh my gosh. And we get a lot of that. Oh, you talk so proper for a Black girl, or I didn't expect to see you, you know, when you go to meet somebody in person. And, you know, one of the things that has been really, really powerful for me, and I don't mean in a positive way, was that I noticed that when I talk to a lot of young Black women who were just starting out freelancing, a lot of us have had the same exact circumstance and have reacted the same way when we put up our very first website. We did not want to put our pictures up. I didn't myself. I'm really embarrassed to say that. But I knew that when I was first starting out, if I wanted to get business, my Black face was going to deter that. And we have all thought that, a lot of us have, until we finally go, you know what? I don't want to work with somebody who doesn't want to work with me because of how I look. And to this day, I know so many of us who are doing that. And that in of itself is an experience that is shared, unfortunately, by so many people, by so many women, especially if they're in particular fields. If they're in IT, or if they're in doing app development, if they're trying to get investors, which we get hardly any in the first place. So just kind of going to Kim with that one.
Very well said. And you know, Lynn, I think that is shared even beyond the Black community. As an Asian, I'm going because, yep, I get, oh, you don't sound Indian. You don't have to have an accent. You must have been here a very long time. Did your parents let you come out here all by yourself? Did they allow you, you know, on that? So it's the assumptions we make when we don't know, and not knowing that what impact that has on the person receiving it. You make us feel different and small, when being different can be a beautiful thing too. Tausha, I'll turn to you.
Sure, I'll be brief. These ladies have kind of checked all the boxes, but because I really want us to focus more of our time on what we think we can do in terms of solutions.
Yes.
I think there's some good ideas on here. I think, you know, I spent a large portion of my career working in private equity, and as one can imagine, it's Game of Thrones. Essentially, Mem is nodding her head because we work together. But as a leader in a company that my business partners and I founded, to your point, being, you know, mistaken for somebody's note taker when we come in the room because someone's like, oh, can someone do this? I just started looking.
Oh, looks like we have a little bit of network issues there. I was experiencing that myself. We'll give Tausha maybe just a few seconds. Maybe she might have to log back in. Nancy, while we're waiting for Tausha, do you want to add anything? I'd be curious to say from your perspective as you've heard all these personal stories.
Easy journey.
Oh, there she is back.
Oh,
Tausha.
okay. Did it freeze up on us? Sorry.
A little bit, yes.
Oh no.
It was just after Game of Thrones.
Oh, yes. It was just too much. So, you know, from this perspective of it was Game of Thrones. I mean, it is predominantly male, predominantly white male, and the assumption of if you're not like us, then you don't quite understand what's going on, and you have to have this level of intelligence that somehow magically only they have, but I'm the only person with a terminal degree in the room, but okay. All right. We'll go with that. So, you know, I don't have much else to add. Those same types of situations, but I think we can spend some of our time because I know we have a limited amount on some of the things we think that we can do to make some changes.
Nancy, did you want to add anything to the stories as you hear from our perspectives before we dive into what can be done about it?
Shaillee, I think I'll just say that I am so all in, and I have been all in for 50 years of my life. I think my work around social and racial justice started when I was 10, and I've done that work in my own family. I've done it and continue to do it within myself. And I'm so grateful for the spaces I've sat in my life with people that are different than me, that gave me perspective and allowed me to be there and to witness life in a new way. And for me, it's the only way I'm willing to do the work that I do in my life. It's either inclusive, everybody's in, or I'm not a part of it. I don't have time. I'm too old and I've only got a certain amount of time, and this is where I want to be. And I am so grateful and honored to just be here, and I want to be part of the solution. You know, that's what it's about. So,
then let's
Tausha, I want us to move on and shift into what we can do to support one another. So thank you.
So right at that, I'm going to pass it on to you, Jennifer, to thank you for facilitating the discussion here. I think all of us are eager to really talk about how can we be part of the change on there.
Absolutely.
So, to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I think that generally there is a sense of angst of, okay, how do we fix this? How do we get started? What do we do? But I think the first step is really sitting in it, realizing that this is not something that happened, you know, after the murder of George Floyd. This is not something that happened after the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. We have been in this and living this and experiencing this. And is there a sense of urgency? Absolutely. But any rush to remedy will not be sustainable. We can't program our way out of this. We can't statement our way out of this. We can't fund nonprofits our way out of this. It will take a all hands on deck approach to transform systems. And so with that, I think that, you know, one of the things that we can do is by starting by exploring our own individual identities, right? We each have a racial identity. And I think that the dominant narrative is that whiteness is not an identity when it is. And unpacking whiteness for folks that are not of color, to begin to understand first yourself and your own earned, in some instances, in other instances, unearned privilege just by being a certain race. And I think that, you know, the other thing that I will say before opening up to the group, just to guide some of the conversation, is what have you seen work well within your organizations and your spheres of influence to truly drive change? And when I say that, you know, I say so with the caveat of, you know, not a program that had a shelf life date, but how can we continue to build pipelines of leaders and connect into talent and change culture within organizations? So, you know, first I will direct it to you, Tausha, to see if you have thoughts on that.
Sure. And I agree with you. I don't want to see another program or another workshop. Because people go in there and they check the box. I think the more difficult work is the one-to-one interpersonal work and making a commitment on a personal level. And that commitment comes with risk, particularly those in corporate settings that advocate for and that are actively involved in trying to, you know, undo some of these systems that we have in place. So I would say the first thing is, number one, to your point, you really got to do your self-work and decide that you want to do this work, right? Because it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be because I sit with so-and-so and have a lunch once a month and I have mentored them. That is not what we need at this point. We need people to actively engage and invest in the betterment or the equality and the inclusion of and I'm speaking for Black women in a corporate setting. So what I mean by that is, you know, making sure that you are including us in meetings, in those social activities that are leading to the discussions about larger projects, that are leading to discussions about greater visibility within the organization, and not on a token level. You've got to get to know us as human beings and have something to talk to me about other than, you know, being the only Black whatever for whatever. And don't invite me only to stuff to be the diversity person. I'm an expert in healthcare. That's why I'm not an expert in diversity. I just happen to be Black. That's it. You know? So if you would like an expert in that, I'm sure we can find one. But, you know, making sure that there are spaces for Black women to show their professional skill, not just their ability to, provide a voice of, the Black person in your organization. They're more than that, and make sure that you're creating opportunities to showcase that talent so that, they are being seen for the professional that they are. Secondly, I think it is, in those meetings when we're not there, you still have to advocate for us. When we're talking about raises, when we're talking about promotions, when we're talking about opportunities to work on large projects, when you start to hear those things, well, I just don't know if she's a good fit. What does that mean? That's code. I'm just going to call it out. It's code. I'm not sure I can work with her, whatever. It's just all these different negative codes that come to play. And I ask, if you're going to be an ally, that you challenge them. I mean, I'm telling you, you can really get to the bottom of some things by using that simple exercise of the 5 whys. Just keep asking them why. Why? 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 And after they have to explain down to the 5th why, suddenly it's like that I'm being ridiculous. Yes, you are. you are. You're being ridiculous. But I think that kind of, courage requires that you feel stable in your own role. And I know that could be really difficult, particularly if you're a woman in corporate America as well. But I also think that there are plenty of women in corporate America with a significant stature and a position to be able to advocate in that way. So I would say make a personal investment and be willing to stick with it when they're in the room and when they're out of the room.
Absolutely, Tausha. And you bring up, just so many great points. I think a couple of things that ring true, allyship, right? I think we've normalized the term ally, though. And I think it's important that we continue to activate and put action behind allyship. So it's not just standing beside me right now, but when I'm not in the room, how are you advocating on my behalf? The other thing that I think is so critically important is moving beyond mentorship to sponsorship. How are you willing to put your privilege on the line to support and create opportunities for others that are coming behind? But excellent points, Tausha. Thanks so much. Mom, what about you? You've been in the workplace for a long time. So
thank you for not saying hello.
For longer than I've been alive, you've been in the workplace, and the work that I'm now doing, right? You've seen a lot of iterations of this. I think that the other thing that's important to highlight is that diversity is not racism. Inclusion and diversity work is not doing equity work. And so what have been some of the changes that you've seen as it relates to tactics in the workplace, and where it still is falling short and where there are opportunities?
I think something you just said is key. And that something you just said is key. And that is the changes and understanding diversity is not racism, and defining these terms so that we're all speaking the same language. I think one of the big things that has to happen to bring about action and change is open, transparent conversations like we're having here. We need to be able to sit in the workplace and have forums or areas where we have these conversations and can walk off and put plans in place about how we systemically go through the organization to rectify these things, to make sure that we're all speaking the same language, to make sure that we're all hearing each other, and make sure that we're all understanding where we're coming from. And that's to the point that all of the ladies have said, understand me, let me be my authentic self and know what that means. Know that if my tone is like this and I'm talking, I'm not an angry Black woman. I'm just expressing what needs to be expressed, but there is nothing else behind it other than that. And dealing with the macroaggressions or the microaggressions that are out there, which really hurt us, and being open and transparent and acknowledging that they occur.
I think to that point, that is the difference between an ally. An ally will sit beside you as a microaggression occurs. An accomplice or an active ally will say, hey, I heard something. Can somebody explain this to me? Or, standing up for and activating in the moment. The other thing that you brought up around tone, I think that it's so important, and this is a generational point. I've had, people, older African Americans tell me, Jennifer, just watch your tone a little bit. And so how are we, encouraging those that are coming behind us and younger generations to be authentic in the workplace, when in reality, it's a survival tactic. It is done out of love and protection, knowing how it will be received. But how can we start to change paradigms? And instead of, encouraging folks to, step back, What about you, Lynn? Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, and I'll be brief so that we can get to the other questions I know you have. So I'll speak from a solopreneur, micro business, freelance perspective. One of the things that we tend to do a lot is we'll have like virtual summits, or we'll have webinars, or instead of hiring employees, we hire other contractors. And I think one of the biggest things that I need to see is brown faces in these spaces. And I don't see it. People say that they are for allyship and diversity and inclusion, but if you go on their website and you look at their team, there is nobody else on that site besides people that look just like them. If you go onto their summit is full of people who look just like them, and maybe one model minority Asian person. And it is going, what you're saying and what the output looks like are not lining up at all. And I would say the other thing that I would add to this, and just flat out, pay people their worth. Stop looking at somebody and going, oh, well, I'm going to pay you this amount of money because you look like this and you're a woman, and I don't value your work as much as I would value somebody else's. But if a counterpart comes along who happens to be white and male, you don't question them saying, I demand more money for what I'm saying, or things of that nature. As a matter of fact, just recently in the finance industry, and this really blew up, a big, well-named, known blogger was talking about the discrepancy in her pay versus another speaker for his pay. I'm not going to name names. And, the CEO got caught out on that. So you're saying that everything is equal and fair. What are you basing it off of if you're saying, well, I believe this person's going to have a different audience? Well, this person also has the same size audience, probably even bigger. Like, what are you basing these things off? Let's talk about implicit bias. So I would say that that's what I would say in looking at it from that level.
Thanks, Lynn. You bring up a great point. Pay people. Bring in experts to do this work right now. And I think this is a great segue into health and well-being. We are re-traumatizing people of color in the workplace, period. When you go to your people of color in moments like this and say, hey, can you explain this stuff? What's going on? Or would you be willing to guide or facilitate a conversation for us? There are experts that you should be bringing into your workplace to mitigate risk and reduce harm, not only to the employees that are of color, but to the well-being and overall health of the organization, to have a sustainable program in place. And so I think that, when we look at the opportunities that we have, they're vast. But specifically, we've talked a lot about trauma and these experiences and the weathering on our bodies and the tax that we carry, especially as women of color. And so I would love to get your thoughts, Nancy, on, what does it mean for us to have culturally responsive services to provide, we already know there's a stigma around mental health services in certain ethnic and communities. So what does it mean, and what are some of the opportunities that you see or are working towards in addressing these topics?
Yeah, there's not enough. We know that there's not enough being done. And the truth of the matter is that if you're not willing to look beyond normal hiring practices, normal ways of recruitment, normal ways of finding people in the world, you're just going to keep doing what you've always done. And of course, there's trauma through all of this that has to be recognized. And Jennifer, I'll just speak for my little part of the world, and what I've done, and practically speaking is purposely looking at, why don't we have a more diverse network? Okay, there's one question. Identifying that there's a problem. Oh, how many people of color is in this network? Okay, that's not good enough. And then taking an active step to look at why, how are we recruiting? Am I looking at the right places? Where am I going to find people that are different? how many people are out there? There's been some amazing resources that I've been able to tap into. And guess what? I reach out to someone, I have a conversation with someone, and they come on board. Not always, but my gosh, it's one person at a time. It's one initiative at a time. And so I've had some goals that I've been able to increase and achieve because I've made a vested interest in doing that. It's been a priority. And I did that whether my manager wanted to or not, but the truth is I have a manager who supports that, who's all about this. So that made a difference for me. But I've been in other organizations where that hasn't been the case. It just hasn't. And so I think companies have to look at that. They have to look inside. And the truth is, I'm disappointed in my profession, to be quite honest. I don't see a lot of this happening. I think there's too many of us that still put our head in the sand and say, oh, everything's okay. So it has to be a conscious effort. And back to your point about allyship, Jennifer, I didn't even know those words 30, 40, 50 years ago. I just thought I was doing the right thing. You know, I got to know people. I had people in my life that didn't look like me, and I talked to them and I understood them, and I had friends and family. And I said, why is it so hard to be a kind, decent human being? So if you want things to be different, you've got to be willing to walk in somebody else's shoes or step into another world and go find out what those resources are and what they look like. I don't think it's that hard to be kind. And I'm just going to step over a line here and just say that I hear people talk about fear. Get over it. Feel the fear and do it anyway was a book I read 100 years ago. But the point is, yeah, that's okay. It's okay because we need to move through this with other people. People are traumatized. The world is bigger than me. And if I don't want to be part of the solution, then what am I doing? So I do get on a soapbox about this. But Jennifer, part of it, I think to come back to your question is you've got to be willing to make a concerted effort to find resources that are perhaps outside of what the system has established.
So to the GW4W team, I think you guys have the greatest point of view on this. How willing are organizations to go beyond traditional measures of EAP that we know, right, maybe not be culturally responsive or have enough providers and look at maybe healing circle funding, right, for their employees to go through healing circles or other communal practices. So what are your thoughts there?
Man.
Oh, is that me?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm listening and learning and just, so one thing, and I'm going to call out a friend of mine, Linda Howard, who looks at this through a policy perspective. She looks at it through a legal lens. So I just want to make it clear. I have a benefits underwriting background and, you know, and so I look at it through, you know, that lens as well. And what I don't think organizations realize, and I'm actually going to publicly say this so that if you are an employee and you need services and you come from a diversity background, you are allowed to bring this up. And in fact, it may actually be a legal issue. You are entitled to have services that you feel comfortable using. So I'm sure that there are some employers right now that are going to be really upset with me, but we need to see change happen. I would also say that it's not just mental health resources. You know, I'm the stat girl. So one of the things that we have brought up numerous times is that Black women die in childbirth in the United States at 4 times the rate of their white counterparts. And so if you are working on fertility benefits, anything around maternity, it is really important to think about this through a diversity lens. Medical benefits, the whole, really, your awards program, and take a good hard look at your policies right now. I want to just mention, I'm sorry, because I wasn't going to do this, but bringing up what are the pictures on your website? And Lynn, I really appreciate that, because that is one thing that any organization can do right now. Again, you can have all the slogans you want, but let's take a good hard look at your leadership that you have listed at the, you know, out there for the public to see. And as you know, as the phrase goes, pictures speak louder than words. So you can look at this through a benefits lens. I think from a health perspective, particularly around COVID, It has impacted the Black community at a much higher rate for a whole host of reasons. We still have a lot of science and data to do around this. But that gets back to a lot of those people coming back into the workplace have seen much more trauma. They didn't get the health care, which now ties into mental health. And you also have the issues around financial health and well-being. So look at these from a systemic perspective in your organization. You got to root out racism, but you've also got to have the resources, the programs, the right benefits, so that everyone can thrive. Everyone has true health and well-being. So that's my soapbox.
Thank you, ma'am. So what I heard you say loud and clear are redirect some of those dollars internal, right?
Yes.
Invest in support for your staff in a way in which is individualized based on what folks need.
100%.
Wonderful. So Lynn, any thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been talking to quite a few mental health professionals in my network. And one of the things that they have brought up consistently is that they would love to be included more and more into these corporate wellness programs and things of that nature. But what's happening is the panels are not letting them in. So now you're getting access, if you even remember, to check out your EAP. And you're looking at who you have, and there's nobody that looks like you. There's no therapist on that panel that looks like you, who sounds like you, who will understand the things that you are going through from a lived experience perspective. So I would say, and this is really kind of macro, let's start asking and demanding that we get certain providers on our list so that we can actually give inclusive therapy care. Let's talk about, like you were saying, the type of care that certain cultures need. It's not only about individual one-on-one therapy for some of us. We like to heal collectively. So why don't we have insurance covering things like dance therapy or expressive arts therapy, things that are embodied health things, somatic experiences? Where are the healthcare providers for that we will have access to using our insurance, so that we can really heal trauma, not only individually as it relates to our work, but collectively as a community and collectively as a body of people who are coming together to do things and progress together. So that's what I would add to that.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, guys, this is the final round. Tausha, I'm going to start with you. What are one or two things that people can do, or steps that leaders can take to become better allies or standing up to confront some of these issues?
Well, I'm going to take it from a leadership perspective. Is number one, acknowledging that it's a problem. It is not an interpersonal problem. It is a systemic problem. So as a leader, you have an obligation and a duty to, within the spheres that you can control, to look at those systems, to try to identify where you can do better and put in place plans to do that. And you're going to have to drag along some people to assist you with that. It's hard work. It's not going to be an email and a conference call. When you commit to it and rooting it out, you may not be able to do everything. I'm not suggesting that one person can do everything because all of us have enough on our shoulders as it is, but you can commit to doing something. And you can't just look at it as an interpersonal thing. You have to look at a system. I think you make greater calls, greater difference when you look at a system. I'll give you an example. I'm a consultant to a very large multinational company, and one of the things they were looking at is their mental health and how they're providing it across 80 countries. And one of the things, when you look at the data, you start to look at how women are disproportionately dealing with a tremendous amount of anxiety and uncertainty as related to COVID, because the number one, they're still having to do their jobs, but they're also having to be housekeepers and caregivers for elder family members and teachers to their children, all of these things, yet their workload has not changed. And how do you create support? So one of the things that I did in presenting this data back to this group of folks is to identify there was actual numbers to suggest not only is this a problem, but when you break it out into Latina and Black women, they have a disproportionate load on them in terms of the additional work they're doing on a day-to-day, the unpaid labor that they're doing. So as you start to try to target your messaging and your resources, because I will give this group a credit, they want to know and they want to try to get the support and resources to the employees who need it, but bringing that out, like stating it implicitly that, okay, this is a problem here, but this is also a bigger problem for this group. I can say, you know, being able to use my voice in that way makes a difference, because nobody would have known that data was there unless they went looking for it, and likely they would not have. But what did it do? It gave the comms team something to think about and how they get messaging through to specific groups, and how do they target, you know, within the subgroups to see how do we get messaging across or additional support. And listen, is this what you need? Is there something else that could support you in a better way? So I think that in a leadership position, you have leverage. You have to use it responsibly to advocate for people who are not getting the attention that they need. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks so much. Mom?
I'm going to echo what these ladies have stated, and it goes back to one of the comments that I made earlier, which really aligns with what Tausha was stating. It's about acknowledgement, right? And the first thing you have to do is acknowledge, yes, this is a problem, but for a certain ethnic group, it's a bigger problem. So how do we collectively address this for the whole and not for the part? But the big point is acknowledgement and openness and transparency and conversations. You have to be able to identify these things from people who are experiencing them, right? I think it was Lynn who said, I look around and I see these panels and who looks like me, right? And automatically, if you're sitting in a room with 1,000 people and no one on that panel looks like you, you're going to be reluctant to feel inclusive, or that there is a true initiative in place to move the needle toward these things. Sure. So Lynn, Nancy, I think we've got a couple of minutes. Any last thoughts to you guys?
Yeah, so I'm going to do some promotion over here really quick. So because we were talking about allyship, I want to actually go back to what you were saying, Jen, about healing some things one-on-one and individually. When everything started taking place, a lot of people of color had been inundated with people going, how are you? And what should I do? As if they don't know how to go on Google and look up things and educate themselves. So what I want to do is I want to suggest that one of the ways that you can help and really be an ally is to do your own research to heal your own hurts as well. One of my friends, I'm going to promote her book really quick because I'm an author and we all help each other out, right? So she has this awesome book called Practice Showing Up, a guide for white people working for racial justice. And this is by Yardena Peacock. And I think that books like that would be very helpful to start. Books don't cost that much money. Pick up a book, read, take the time to actually heal some of your own internal racism, as well as your own internal trauma that's causing you to be and not believing in your racism that's already settled within your body. And the other thing that I would say is more directed to other people of color. We need to check our own internal bias as well, because we have been systematically oppressed, and it has infiltrated our minds and our bodies and our souls. And we have lost cultural identity as a purpose of that. So we have to reclaim our heritage, our identity, our time. Hey, Auntie Maxie. And that starts with educating ourselves too. Right now, one of the most popular books on New York Times bestseller is I think it's in my grandmother's hands, or I'm probably mispronouncing it. Which is a really good book for starting to heal some of those things that we can do collectively. I would also recommend a book really quick called Women of Color Talk by Dr. Angela Clack. She's a Black woman, and so you can see her book. She's one of my mentors. and just start healing our own stuff inside. So, and doing what I did. If you got a platform, bring up your other people while you're at it. So.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I realize that we're at time. If you want to do something tonight and you can't get a book, there is a list of resources that I have put together through Calibrated Lenses called Navigating Uncertainty and Unrest. I'm sure that the team at GW4W can get that out or put it on the website or associate it with this. It's a narrative, but several resources, books, webinars, TED Talks, immediate steps that you can take after hearing this conversation. So with that, I thank you for the time. I will turn it back over to Mem. Thanks for the opportunity for engaging us in this platform, Mem. I appreciate you.
Well, I just thank you, Jen, Shaillee, to all our amazing speakers. I'm going to take just a couple minutes because I know that women do not speak up for themselves in the way that men do. And I just want to honor the amazing leaders that we have on this call. Kim Ingram is the Director of Cybersecurity for Ally Bank. So kudos and thank you for sharing your voice. Tausha, as she said, we worked together. She didn't say this, she was my boss, and she was a wonderful boss. And it's just a joy to be a friend and to have you on our board. She is the founder and principal consultant at Xperi Consulting. She is the co-founder of the Alterity Group. She also worked in health and well-being with Carl Icahn's group. So want to call that out. Lynn Davis, honestly, we could not do what we do as GW4W without everything she does on a regular basis. She is amazing. As you know, as she said, she's an author and writer. She is a mental health advocate. Lynn has her own book that I want to recommend, and it is called Success to Die For. So go out, please order it. Good. And my dear friend, Nancy Board, who's a co-founder of GW4W, as you heard, she has been a global advocate, and we hope that we can continue this conversation, that we can listen, learn, and then take action. So we are planning on our second conversation. We'll be bringing in some of our voices from London and Europe to talk about the Black experience for women in that part of the world. So stay tuned, and we'll be getting a date out soon. And please, if you are looking for support in any way, we have an amazing network. We are happy to get you connected. If you are feeling isolated, alone, having a mental health issue, info@gw4w.org. We will get you to someone. We are committed to making positive change. And I'll end with this. We always talk about using your voice. But voice for us means, what is the new vision for our future? The O is, how are we going to open up opportunity, real opportunity for each other? We've said on this call, it is hard work. It is hard work to make change. So we have to share the stories of inspiration. So let's inspire each other. The C is for connect. Connect in every way we possibly can. Together we are stronger. We are all different. We all need to honor our own journeys and paths and share those. But when we stand together, we can empower, and that's the E, real change in the world. Thank you for everybody on this call for using your voice. We invite everybody out there to continue to use their voice. Let's make positive change. And we look forward to seeing you on our next heart-to-heart conversation. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.